All right. So welcome everyone to the Sidelined Athlete Workshop. So this workshop is going to answer the question of why your athlete is always injured. So do you want your athlete to be as competitive as they can be? Or do you not care about their competitiveness, but you want your child to stop injuring themselves? Well, the solution to both of these problems is actually very similar. Has your athlete done all the strengthening or stretching they were told to do? Or have they been told to rest to heal their injury, only to wind up re-injured when they return to sport? If your athlete is losing time to injuries and constantly in rehab, then they're not maximizing their performance and they're not competing at their highest level. It's time to try something different. What is that, you ask? Their body is probably out of sync with itself, so it's time to get it in sync, or like we like to call it, in neurosync. So here at Neurosync, we believe there's two injury pathways. So many young athletes either take path number one, they push through it, or they take path number two, and they rest appropriately, but they're losing precious time. So if they push through it, taking path number one, their injury never heals or becomes worse. And examples of this are a chronic ankle sprain that's always in pain and never quite as stable as it should be, chronic knee pain like Osgood-Schlatters disease, which causes a bony buildup with patellar tendinopathy, or chronic back pain from doing one too many back bends without proper control. Or they could end up with abnormal movement patterns from pain and injury, creating other injuries. And abnormal movement patterns are if you're running with a slight limp, you may put stress on your healthy leg. If you're squatting with your knees coming together to avoid hip pain, which might cause a knee injury, or if you're modifying your basketball shot to avoid your shoulder pain, but you might cause an injury in your elbow, your opposite shoulder, or your trunk. Injury path number two, if your athlete rests appropriately but loses precious time, they become frustrated because they can't do the thing they love, or they might return to sport only to re-injure themselves and have to sit out again. Just remember, it takes 2 weeks to lose muscle mass, and while resting an injured area is very important, the longer an athlete takes complete rest, the longer their recovery process will be because of all that deconditioning. Sometimes, too, it's recommended for kids to completely sit out, aka do no activity. I know I had that recommendation as a young injured athlete back in the day. And after that period of time, they're cleared not to go to therapy, but to go immediately back into sport with full intensity. So in the meantime, their injured tissues were starting to feel better, but the rest of their body was getting weaker. And when they returned to sport, they're testing a newly healed injury on a less conditioned, less fine-tuned system. This is how they might re-injure that newly healed injury or create new injuries in new areas. So injury path number one or injury path number two might lead to the injury merry-go-round. So the injury merry-go-round occurs when a child has injured the same joint, ligament, or muscle so many times, and or your child has many different injuries. And this can lead to a chronic issue like chronic pain, tendinosis that's hard to kick, muscle or joint damage that eventually needs surgery or is beyond repair. And all of these result in a child who is both not feeling their best and not competing at their best, or potentially not competing at all if their injury is severe enough. So, how do we get off the injury merry-go-round? With Neurosync Athletics, of course. Let's compare approaches. So with a traditional therapy approach, a lot of times this includes spot treatments. It ignores the root cause of recurrent injuries and ignores our body's sensory system. But with our Neurosync approach, we're treating the whole body, we're improving asymmetries in our body, and treating the sensory system to treat our injury and its root cause. So how is Neurosync different? We're specifically improving postural symmetry and integrating our sensory system to allow athletes to move more efficiently and synergistically. Let's try some multisensory moves, everybody. So our first move that we're going to experiment is a lunge with our eyes closed. So go ahead and stand up and try this real quickly. How wobbly is it? As you're testing yourself, feel if one side feels different than the other, or if it's wobblier with your eyes closed versus your eyes open. Obviously, as you can see in our video here, one of our lovely therapist volunteers, that it's really difficult on one side compared to the other side. And it's very difficult with our eyes closed. We'll give everybody a minute to test that one out. Okay. Let's move on to our next slide. So our next move that we want to test out is a single limb squat or a single limb sit to stand from a chair. So same deal here. You're going to assess yourself. This one, definitely keep your eyes open for because it's already challenging enough as it is. But you're going to assess yourself and determine if one side is different from the other side, if one side is more wobbly than the other side, or if one side just feels really, really difficult. That's a good sign of either those asymmetries or just our sensory system not being completely in sync as we're moving. So our last movement that we can experiment with, this one's a little trickier. So if you don't have enough room in your environment, that's okay. But you can test it out if you have a safe kind of open space to try this out in, is a figure 8 walk. So you can start to walk in a figure 8 around your room while combining your eyes with this. So keep your eyes glued to a target while you're moving. Ask yourself as you're going through this, and I'll play this video again because it was pretty quick. Are you able to multitask by keeping your eyes on the target while you're walking in a figure 8, or is it really tricky to walk in that figure 8 and keep your eyes focused at the same time? This child here is actually reading at the same time as she's walking around the cone. So that adds an extra level of difficulty where the brain is having to multitask on a cognitive task at the same time. So it's even trickier. And these are all things that our athletes are having to do while they're on the field. They're having to multitask in real time, which is why, and we'll get into this in a second, these multi-sensory interventions are so important. So with our neurosync approach, we like to first treat our sneaky asymmetries. So often asymmetries are missed in athletes, but they tend to be the root cause of an injury. So our bodies have sneaky asymmetries as well. You, me, everybody walking around, you might not even realize they're there, but a lot of times they are. Sports are repetitive in nature, so we're often doing the same running, kicking, jumping, throwing, etc. And doing repetitive loading on an asymmetric system causes the body to place more stress on one side, one joint, one muscle, one tendon, etc., than all of our other tissues. So over time, that asymmetric repetitive loading can cause an injury. Asymmetries can even be found in our trunk, pelvis, and sometimes our arms and legs too. And you'd be surprised how often people develop an injury in their arm or their leg because their trunk is not doing what it's supposed to do, and it's not as symmetric as it should be in movement. So when the body starts in alignment, it isn't at war with itself. It can work like a finely oiled, pristine machine. When all of our body systems work together to use our alignment, the body moves as one cohesive unit, loading all of our body parts equally. So let's visualize something. Imagine you're building a tower in Jenga. You wouldn't build the whole thing at an angle, right? It would completely collapse or be very tedious if it didn't. You wouldn't want your body to be moving like that either. So playing and competing on an asymmetric system can be kind of like making a leaning tower in Jenga work, and eventually the pieces are going to fall. The second thing we like to be really mindful of with our neurosync approach is doing no spot treatments. So we like to treat all parts of the body that are impacting our injury, not just one area. More specifically, spot treatments are when you only focus on one joint or area that's injured. For example, if you have a knee injury and you just treat the knee, then that's kind of like a spot treatment. Whereas if you're treating your knee, you want to be treating your glutes, your core, all the areas around that joint that need to work to stabilize it as well. Our body works as one whole cohesive unit. And if something up the chain isn't working correctly, it may affect something below. And if something below isn't working well, everything above can be impacted as well. The truth is, our glutes and our core help to stabilize our knee joint, like we said, but having strong ankles, so below the knee, also helps stabilize the knee, the hip, and everything up the chain. So not treating our body like it's one connected system is surely not going to lead to success and recovery because the body will still be unbalanced. But wait, there's more. Excuse me. We can't forget about our sensory system as well. So in NeuroSync, we also like to treat our somatosensory system. So improving the somatosensory system is just as important as improving our motor system. We can't ignore half of our body's neuromuscular control in our treatments. So our somatosensory system is what our body can touch and feel. This includes our ability to feel our joints and limbs and how we make sense of their connections to each other, aka our proprioception. We need to fine-tune joint awareness and body awareness so that the body is moving precisely where we want it to go. So when our somatosensory system is working efficiently, our joints, like our knees, ankles, hips, spine, shoulders, elbows, and neck, all of them, will know where they are in space. Our muscles around them will then know how to activate to hold them in place appropriately. And we can do this quickly and efficiently to move on to our next move without injury. But wait, there's even more. Part of our sensory system also includes our visual and vestibular systems, so we can't forget them too. We need to hijack our visual and vestibular systems with our NeuroSync sports treatment. So our visual system shows us what's around us. It sees our environment. Our vestibular system is our inner balance center. It's located right behind your ears. It's pretty tiny. You probably don't know it's there, but it tells you where you are in relation to gravity. If you jump, your vestibular system knows. If you turn, it knows. If you walk forward, backwards, or sideways, it knows that too, or at least it should. If these systems are not functioning properly, they can become part of the problem. When either one of them is not functioning properly, like say your vestibular system or your visual system, or they are not working properly together or coordinating, or both of these things combined. Both of these systems are so important for movement. They give us the context for all of our movement decisions. And they're so important for athletics as well. So here's an example of how important they are for athletics. You see a ball flying at you. You see the angle it's coming towards you. That's your visual system that's sensing that movement. Then you start to move to catch the ball. So you're giving your body vestibular input through that movement. That information tells your body how high to lift your arms, where to place your body in space in relation to the ball, and what muscles to activate so you don't trip or fall on your way there or when you land. So all together, they're coordinating for you to activate your postural system. If they're working together, you move to that just right spot, you catch the ball, which is awesome. If they're not working together, you might miss the ball, your body might move to the wrong spot, you fall, and so on. So here's an excellent example of a multi-system intervention. So this athlete is activating her motor system just with the movement of the golfer squat that she's doing. And in the meantime, she's activating her somatosensory system by sensing her feet and her entire body for balance. I'll play that video again. just so you can see how amazing she looks. She's also using her visual system. See how she's carefully directing her gaze toward the cones each time, and she's keeping her eyes locked on that target. So she's working on gaze stability here as well. And she's getting lots of excellent vestibular information because she's moving forward and backward in space and up and down to maintain her balance. So again, this is just an excellent example of a multi-sensory, multi-system intervention that's used to benefit athletic performance. So when our motor system is aligned and coordinated with our somatosensory system, our visual system, and our vestibular system, our body can move happily and it can move healthily. Let's not make our bodies work harder. Let's make them work smarter by involving all of our necessary systems. We don't want our athletes to get stuck on the injury merry-go-round. So don't settle for mediocre treatment that doesn't resolve the unseen postural asymmetries, and focus on our athlete's whole body, sensory system included. So let's move into some examples now of how this multi-sensory, multi-system approach helped improve our athletes' performance and keep injury away. Our first example is Abby. All of our participants' names have been changed just to protect their identities, but she's one of the kiddos we worked with for sports-related treatment. So she had an old history of left ankle pain, and she has a new or recent onset or history of left and right knee pain. Her pain, I'll play this video again just so you can kind of look at the way she's moving, get used to her movement patterns. Her pain is keeping her out of soccer, basketball, dance, and acro classes. She's very frustrated she can't play sports with her friends. She's a very active, athletic kid, and she loved to play sports all the time. So the fact that she was having to sit out from all her sports and even gym class was really making her upset. And her parents are very frustrated with multiple rounds of therapy that were only focused on her ankle joint. As you can see here, she's a very athletic kid. So she can coordinate, she can keep her that ball control and everything like that. But something was off and her body was continuing to tell her with pain. So here's an example of her movements before. I'm going to pause one so we can watch one at a time. But here in this video to the left, you can kind of see her knees are falling in, her arches are collapsing when she's hopping. So I'll play that again so we can see it. So just watch her knees and ankles. One more time. She has decreased motor control. So you can see, again, seen in those knees and ankles, how her legs are kind of all over the place there. Her trunk has to lean way over to keep her balance. She's just not very in control of her body here. She also has decreased power output. So see how short and choppy these little hops here are. So she's not able to produce a lot of power with each jump. And that is making her jumping and hopping inefficient. So she's doing lots of short, small hops. So I'll play this one too. So even though she was having left knee pain at the time of the evaluation here, you can kind of see those deviations on both sides. So you can see on this left side as well, her foot's collapsing, her knees falling in, and this is her painful side. And it looks even more difficult and inefficient on this side as well. So moving on to our next example. So this is an example of her running. So while she's running here, you can see her spine is flexed forward. That often tells us that our athletes have a tight trunk and it's not moving correctly. She also has asymmetric trunk rotation here. So you can really see that at the beginning of this video. So watch her left arm compared to her right arm. See how it's flying out there? So she's really rotating her upper body to the left side and not so much to the right side. So you can also see that foot collapse here as she's moving. So her feet are collapsing, her knees are falling in. Again, she doesn't have great motor control of her lower limbs, of her core. And same thing as with the hopping, she has really short, choppy strides. She's having to take a lot of strides, so she has decreased power output. and it's a lot less efficient than it should be. So here's some excellent examples of her post-treatment. She is able to do a much more difficult hopping exercise that she would not have been able to do prior to NeuroSync treatment. She has significantly improved alignment of her knees and ankles here. So just watch her ankle control here. And this is her harder side too. As she's moving through, you don't really see that knee falling in. She's able to pause in between and hold her balance. So she has more control, much more power. So see how much further she can hop. So she's gaining more ground with less work, so she's more efficient. And same thing on this other side here. And this is even faster, which is awesome. So she looks great. And here's an example of her running after as well. So I'll do one at a time here too. So she has improved posture. You can see in both of these videos that she has much improved just trunk extension, which basically means she's not as forward in her trunk, like that poor posture we typically see in adults and kids sometimes too. She's standing much more upright. She has much more symmetric trunk rotation. You don't see that left arm flying out. So I'm going to play this video now too. So her trunk and her limbs are rotating evenly. Her hips, knees, and ankles are keeping their alignment. So watch as she's running back here on that video on the right. And same thing here. I know it's hard to see in her sweatpants a little bit, but it's easier to see in her jeans. Watch those knees and her ankles and everything. I'll play that one more time too, because I know that one's a lot shorter. But see, everything just looks much more active. And I think most importantly, again, she has just much more efficiency of her movement. She has an increased stride length and she's expending less energy, which is going to make her more effective and less tired over a longer period of time on the field. Another cool thing that this specific athlete found throughout her course of treatment was an improved sense of body awareness, which is always the goal as well. So through watching herself in the mirror, using all of those multisensory system approaches, by the end of her treatment, she was able to say that repetition or that one felt weird, or that one I felt my arm flying out more than the one before that. So she gained a significantly improved awareness of how her body was moving in space so she can adapt herself for the future too, which is an amazing thing that she can do. And this is a video of her sprinting. So again, she's keeping control of her body. She's keeping all of those improvements we worked on, even though she's going faster, which makes the task harder, with no pain. And I think that's the pinnacle, most important thing that she's doing there, that she's having no pain with any of this difficult movement. And here's just a little video of her in action. So she's cutting, she's keeping pace with the ball, keeping control of her body and the ball, and multitasking, and still has no pain. And she has not had a recurrence of her pain to this day. All right, so moving on to our next friend here. This is Annabelle. So Annabelle is a competitive gymnast. She came in with a left ankle sprain, which was causing pain during impact with both practice and competition. Her parents are worried about her approaching competition and her risk for re-injury, but Annabelle loves gymnastics and does not want to take any time off. So as you can see here in this video on the left, Annabelle has collapsing of her arches. I'm going to pause this one so they're running smoothly. So she has collapsing of her feet and arches there. One of the big things that really jumps out in this video is her asymmetric rotation. So watch how her knees are tracking. I'm going to play that one more time. So look at her knees moving to that left side. So she's got those postural asymmetries there. She's got pretty poor alignment. So again, her right leg is falling in, her right foot is falling in, her knee is going in. And then laterally too, you can see that poor alignment here. When she squats, her trunk is flexing forward. That also shows signs of decreased core control and decreased core activation. And she was breath holding while doing all these things. So that shows that her core is not working as efficiently as it should be as well. So this is a video of her squat post neurosync treatment. So you can see her hips, knees, and ankles are in significantly improved alignment. Let's play that one again. So they're tracking forward. You don't see that funky rotation in her pelvis, knees, or anything like that. She has significantly improved stability. See how much less wobbly she is. So she's really solid when she's moving up and down here. And she has significantly improved motor control. So in that last video, you might not have caught it, but she was moving and dropping her body down very quickly. So what that often tells us as therapists is that a child has decreased eccentric control and they can't control their body as gravity's pulling down on them. So here, she's able to control that movement. She's going nice and slow, and that motion is beautiful there. So here's a video of her ankle control before. So obviously this is a very hard task, but she is a high level gymnastics athlete. So we have to make sure she's up to the task by having her do challenging things. So in this video, you can see that she's got decreased ankle control. You can see that ankle wobbling side to side. She has decreased trunk control and balance. You see her trunk kind of wobbling laterally there, back and forth. And she's using some compensatory patterns as well. So this one's a little bit more slight, but you can kind of see her trying to rise onto her toes too intermittently just to keep her balance. So yeah, watch how her trunk's moving all over the place here. She's pretty wobbly. Her leg kicks out at certain points just to try and keep that balance. This looks pretty tricky for her. And you can see she's even laughing at herself too. And then once this one's done, we'll get a great example of her after. So she made some excellent improvements through our program. Here's a video of her. Look how much more controlled her ankle is there and her trunk. So she is a little wobbly. Again, this is very hard, but she's solid. See how she's moving that weight side to side and it's not throwing her. She's keeping that trunk in the middle. She's able to stabilize her body and she's able to stabilize her medial lateral ankle or that side to side motion without using any compensatory patterns, which is amazing. So here's a video of her competing and looking awesome. Most importantly, she has no pain, but she also has more strength and more control. So here she goes. She's doing a high impact back handspring and lots of jumping. And again, has not had a recurrence of her ankle pain. And she won second place, which is amazing. So if you want your athlete to be healthy and back to sport, do find a physical therapist that will fix the problem and fix it the first time without just slapping a Band-Aid on it. Thank you all so much for attending our NeuroSync Athletics Sidelined Athletes workshop. Does anybody have any questions?